I woke up to the sound of my oxygen concentrator sputtering, which is not something you ever want to hear when it's the only thing keeping you alive. My name is Samuel Watson, and 3 years ago I survived a chemical fire at the manufacturing plant where I worked outside of Phoenix, Arizona. The doctors told me I was lucky to be alive, but some days I wonder about their definition of luck. My lungs are permanently scarred, and I need supplemental oxygen 24 hours a day. The concentrator is my lifeline, literally. It runs on electricity most of the time, but I keep a backup propane generator that automatically kicks in during power outages, which happen more often than you would think in our neighborhood in Scottsdale. The machine made that awful grinding noise again, and I checked the display. Low fuel warning. That couldn't be right. I had just filled that 500-gallon propane tank 2 weeks ago, and even running it occasionally for testing. It should have lasted me at least 4 months. I grabbed my portable oxygen tank, the small one I use when I need to go outside for more than a few minutes, and headed out to check the main tank. It was 6 in the morning, and the Arizona sun was just starting to turn the sky that particular shade of orange that tourists love so much. I had seen enough of it to last a lifetime. The propane tank sat on the side of my house, behind a wooden privacy screen that I had built specifically to keep it out of sight. The HOA had thrown a fit about the installation, but my lawyer had shut that down real quick with the Americans with Disabilities Act. They couldn't prevent me from having medical equipment, no matter how much they wanted everything to look like a magazine spread. What I saw when I rounded the corner made my blood pressure spike so high I could feel it in my temples. There was a blue hose running from my propane tank, over the fence, and into my neighbor's yard. Not just any neighbor. Brenda Whitmore, the HOA president and the biggest pain in my neck since I had moved into this God-forsaken community 2 years ago. I followed the hose with my eyes, and there it was, clear as day. The hose connected to a massive patio heater on Brenda's deck. Not just one patio heater, actually. 3 of them, all running, heating her outdoor living space to probably 80 degrees even though it was already going to hit 95 today. My hands were shaking, and not from lack of oxygen. I checked the tank gauge. 20%. I had been at 90% 2 weeks ago. This woman had used 70% of my medical propane to heat her outdoor furniture. I marched straight to her front door and rang the bell. Then I rang it again. And again. I could hear movement inside, and finally, Brenda opened the door in a silk robe with her hair in rollers. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" she snapped. "You have any idea that you are stealing from my medical propane tank?" I shot back. She had the audacity to look confused. "Excuse me. There is a hose running from my propane tank to your patio heaters, my medical propane tank. The one that keeps me breathing." Brenda's face did something complicated. First confusion, then recognition, then this horrible attempt at innocence. "Oh, that. Harold said it was fine." "Harold said what was fine?" "My husband. He said there was a community propane hookup back there. For emergencies. He hooked up our patio heaters last week for my book club meetings." I could not believe what I was hearing. "That is not a community hookup. That is my tank, for my medical equipment, and it is nearly empty because you have been heating your patio." "Well, I did not know that," she said, like that made everything okay. "Harold handles all the utilities." "Where is Harold?" "He is in Denver for work. He will be back next week." I took a deep breath from my portable tank. "You need to disconnect from my tank right now. And you are going to pay to refill it. Today." Brenda's face hardened into that expression I had seen at every HOA meeting. The one that said she was used to getting her way and did not appreciate being challenged. "I think you are overreacting. It is just propane." And technically, that tank is visible from the street, which violates our community standards anyway. I have been meaning to send you a violation notice. You cannot give me a violation notice for medical equipment. We have been over this. We will see what the board says about that. And I am certainly not paying for propane that Harold thought was communal property. If your tank was not properly labeled, that is your problem. She shut the door in my face. I stood there for a solid minute, trying to process the sheer audacity. Then I went back around and disconnected the hose myself. The coupling was hand-tight, which meant Harold had just hooked himself up without even asking. I coiled up their hose and threw it over the fence onto their deck. Back inside, I called my propane company. They could not come until tomorrow. Tomorrow. I did the math in my head. 20% with my generator usage pattern meant I had maybe 3 days if the power stayed on. If we had an outage, I had maybe 6 hours before I would be in serious trouble. I called my doctor's office next. The nurse who answered knew me by name. "Samuel, what is wrong? My backup propane is almost gone. Someone stole it. I need to know what my options are if I run out during a power outage before I can get a refill." There was a pause. "How much do you have left?" "About 20% of a 500-gallon tank." "And you can get it refilled when?" "Tomorrow," they say. Another pause. "Keep your portable tanks fully charged. If you lose power, call 911 immediately. Do not wait. With your lung capacity, you do not have time to wait and see if it comes back on." "I know." "Samuel, I mean it." "This is serious." "I know," I repeated. "Trust me, I know." I spent the rest of the morning documenting everything. I took photos of my propane tank, the gauge, the spot where their hose had been connected. I took photos of their patio heaters. I took screenshots of my last propane delivery receipt. I wrote down everything Brenda had said, word for word, while it was fresh in my memory. Then I did what I should have done the moment I moved into this neighborhood. I called a lawyer. My attorney, Marcus Freeman, had handled my initial HOA dispute about the propane tank. He was expensive, but he was good, and he did not tolerate nonsense. "Samuel, good to hear from you. What has the HOA done now?" I explained the situation. There was a long silence on the other end. "She used your medical propane for her patio heaters." "Yes." "And now you are at 20%. "Yes." "And she refuses to pay for a refill. She says her husband thought it was communal property." Marcus made a noise that might have been a laugh or a growl. "Communal medical propane. That is a new one. Okay, here is what we are going to do. First, document everything, which it sounds like you have done. Second, get that tank refilled and keep the receipt. Third, send a formal demand letter to both Brenda and Harold Whitmore for the cost of the propane they stole, plus the emergency refill fee. I will draft it today. Fourth, file a police report." "A police report?" "Samuel, they stole medical equipment." "Well, the fuel for medical equipment, but same thing. That is not just theft. In Arizona, interfering with medical equipment can be prosecuted as a felony depending on the circumstances. I do not want to send anyone to prison. I just want my propane paid for and for them to leave me alone." "I understand, but you need to create a paper trail. Trust me on this. These HOA situations can escalate and you want documentation that this happened. You do not have to push for charges. Just file the report." I agreed, and after we hung up, I called the Scottsdale Police non-emergency number. They sent an officer out that afternoon. Officer Rodriguez was probably in his late 20s, and he took the whole thing very seriously once I explained about my medical condition. He took photos, took my statement, looked at my medical equipment, and examined the propane tank. "And she admitted to using it?" he asked. "She said her husband hooked up their patio heaters to what he thought was a communal tank, But she knew it was my tank once I told her, and she still refused to pay for the refill. Is the tank marked as medical equipment? It has the medical supplier sticker on it, and it is behind a privacy screen on my property. There is no way anyone could reasonably think it was communal. Rodriguez nodded and made notes. I am going to classify this as theft of services for now. Given the medical equipment angle, the detective division might want to follow up. Someone will be in touch. After he left, I sat in my living room and tried to calm down. The stress was making my breathing worse, which made me need more oxygen, which made me more stressed. It was a vicious cycle. My phone rang. It was my daughter, Grace, calling from Tucson where she was finishing her nursing degree. "Hey, Dad, just checking in. How are you feeling?" I had not planned to tell her. Grace worried enough as it was, but the whole story came spilling out. "Are you kidding me?" Her voice went up an octave. "That horrible woman used your propane. Dad, you could have died." "I am fine, sweetheart. I am handling it." "You are not fine. 20%. What if the power had gone out? What if you had not noticed?" "But I did notice, and I am taking care of it." I called Marcus. "I filed a police report. The propane company comes tomorrow. I am coming up there." "Grace, you have classes." "I do not care. I am coming this weekend, and I am going to give that woman a piece of my mind." "That is not necessary." "It absolutely is necessary." "You are too nice, Dad. You let people walk all over you." That stung a bit, mostly because it was partially true. Before the accident, I had been different, more assertive. But nearly dying changes you. I had been focused on just getting through each day, not on fighting battles with neighbors. "Please do not come up here to cause trouble," I said. "I am coming to support you. The trouble is already there." After we hung up, I realized my hands had stopped shaking. Having Grace on my side made everything feel more manageable, even if I did not want her to have to deal with this mess. The next morning, the propane company arrived right on schedule. The driver, a guy named Pete who had been delivering to my house since I moved in, looked at the gauge and whistled. "You went through 400 gallons in 2 weeks. Is your generator running constantly?" "No." "My neighbor was stealing it for her patio heaters." Pete's eyebrows went up. "Your medical propane. That is messed up, man." "Yeah. I need you to do me a favor. Can you put a lock on the connection?" "Already got one in the truck. Had a guy last year whose neighbor was filling up his RV." "People are something else." He filled the tank, installed a brass lockable coupling, and gave me 2 keys. The total was $873 because of the emergency refill fee and the after-hours premium. I paid it and got a detailed receipt. "You should sue them," Pete said as he was leaving. "Working on it," I replied. That afternoon, I got an email from the HOA. Not from Brenda directly, but from the HOA management company's generic account. The subject line was "Notice of Violation." My blood pressure spiked again as I opened it. They were citing me for unauthorized modification of property exterior because of the lock on the propane coupling. They claimed it was visible from the street and did not match the approved color palette. I had 7 days to remove it or face a fine of $100 per day. I forwarded the email to Marcus. He called me 5 minutes later. "They are retaliating. This is perfect. Perfect. They are going to fine me for putting a lock on my medical equipment, which they cannot do. And now we have proof that Brenda is using her HOA position to retaliate against you for reporting the theft. This actually strengthens your case significantly." "What case?" "I just want them to pay for the propane." "Samuel, this has gone beyond propane. They endangered your life, refused to make it right, and are now harassing you. We are going to send a cease and desist letter, a demand letter, and if they do not back down immediately, we are filing suit." For $873. For theft, emotional distress, retaliation, and HOA violations. We are going to ask for actual damages, punitive damages, and attorney fees. My head was spinning. This had escalated so fast. 2 days ago, my biggest worry was making it to my pulmonologist appointment next month. Now I was talking about lawsuits and felony charges. "Let me think about it," I said. "Do not think too long. And whatever you do, do not remove that lock." Grace arrived that Friday evening, letting herself in with her key and immediately giving me a careful hug. She pulled back and studied my face. "You look tired." "I am always tired. Comes with the territory." "More tired than usual. Have you been sleeping?" "Not great." She set down her overnight bag and went straight to check my oxygen concentrator, then my portable tanks. Then she walked outside to look at the propane tank. She was in full nurse mode, which would have been funny if the situation was not so serious. When she came back inside, her face was red. "I am going over there." "Grace, no. Dad, that woman could have killed you. Does she understand that? Does she get that you could have died because she wanted her outdoor space to be warm?" "I do not think she cares." "Then someone needs to make her care." Before I could stop her, Grace was out the door and heading to Brenda's house. I grabbed my portable oxygen and followed as quickly as I could, but Grace was already ringing the doorbell by the time I got there. Brenda opened the door, saw Grace's furious face, and her expression immediately went defensive. "Can I help you? You can start by apologizing to my father and paying him back for the propane you stole." "I do not know who you are, but I do not appreciate your tone." "I am Samuel Watson's daughter, and I do not appreciate you almost killing him." "That is ridiculous. It was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Grace's voice was getting louder. "You hooked up to his medical equipment and drained it. That is not a misunderstanding. That is theft. And when someone needs that equipment to breathe, it is attempted murder. Now you listen here, young lady. Your father's propane tank is improperly secured and insufficiently marked. If anything, he should be cited for creating an attractive nuisance." I had never heard someone call a medical propane tank an attractive nuisance before, but apparently there was a first time for everything. "Are you actually trying to blame him right now?" Grace asked, incredulous. "I am saying that Harold made an honest mistake, and your father is blowing this completely out of proportion. It is just propane. We did not steal anything. You used 400 gallons of his propane without permission. That is literally the definition of stealing." Brenda's face was getting red now too. "I think you both need to leave my property before I call the police." "Please do," Grace said. "I would love to explain to them how you stole medical equipment." "Get off my porch." Now, Grace looked like she wanted to say more, but I put a hand on her arm. "Come on, this is not helping." We walked back to my house, and Grace was practically vibrating with anger. "I cannot believe her. I cannot believe she is trying to act like she is the victim here. Welcome to 2 years of dealing with the HOA. How do you stand it?" "I mostly try to avoid them. Before this, I just paid their ridiculous fines when they came up and kept my head down." "You cannot keep doing that, Dad. These people are bullies. You have to stand up to them." "That is what Marcus says." Marcus is right. We spent the evening talking through everything that had happened. Grace read through all my documentation, looked at the photos, read the demand letter Marcus had drafted. By the end of the night, she had convinced me. "Send the letters," she said. "All of them. And if they do not respond appropriately, file the lawsuit." It seems so extreme. "Dad, what they did was extreme. You are just protecting yourself." On Monday morning, Marcus sent the demand letters via certified mail to both Brenda and Harold Whitmore, as well as to the HOA management company. The letters laid out everything: the theft of the propane, the cost to refill it, the potential danger to my health, and the retaliatory violation notice. We demanded reimbursement of the $873 plus $300 in additional fees within 10 business days. We also demanded immediate withdrawal of the violation notice and a written apology. Marcus also sent a separate cease and desist letter specifically about the violation notice, citing the Ada and Arizona's fair housing laws. That one had more legal jargon and more serious threats. I did not expect them to respond, but on Wednesday I got a call from Harold Whitmore himself. "Mr. Watson, this is Harold Whitmore. I think we need to talk." His voice was measured, careful. This was not the conversation of someone who was angry. This was someone trying to do damage control. "I am listening," I said. "I want to start by saying that I had absolutely no idea that was your medical propane tank. I genuinely thought it was a community hookup. How did you come to that conclusion?" "When we moved in, the previous owner mentioned something about propane access in the utility area. I did not realize he meant something different. And when my lawyer's letter explained the situation, what was your reaction?" There was a pause. I was horrified. "Mr. Watson, I am not a monster. The thought that I might have endangered your health is extremely upsetting to me, but not upsetting enough for your wife to apologize or offer to pay for the refill." Another pause. Brenda was embarrassed. She gets defensive when she is embarrassed. "It is not an excuse, just an explanation. Your lawyer's letter says you want $1,100. I would like to settle this for the $873 that you actually paid, plus I will cover the cost to have a proper warning sign installed on your tank." Would that be acceptable? It was more than I expected. "What about the violation notice? That will be withdrawn. I am on the HOA board too, though Brenda is the president. I can make that happen." "And the apology," Harold sighed. "Can we settle for a written acknowledgement that a mistake was made and it will not happen again?" From Brenda specifically. "I will do my best. My wife is not always great at admitting when she is wrong. I have noticed." We agreed to terms, and Harold said he would have his attorney draft a settlement agreement. It felt too easy, which made me suspicious, but Marcus thought it was a reasonable offer. "Take the settlement," he advised. "You get your money back, they back off, and you do not have to go through a lawsuit. That is a win." But I should have known better. I should have known that Brenda Whitmore was not the type to let things go just because her husband wanted to be reasonable. The settlement papers arrived on Friday. Everything looked good. Harold had included the full amount, plus an extra $200 for the warning sign installation, which was generous. The violation notice withdrawal was in writing. There was even a brief statement from Harold acknowledging that a mistake had been made and apologizing for any distress caused. I signed it and sent it back. The check arrived 3 days later. I thought that was the end of it. Then the next HOA meeting happened. I did not usually attend the monthly meetings. They were held in the evening, and by that time of day I was usually exhausted. But Grace was still staying with me for a few weeks, taking some online classes and helping me out, and she insisted we go. "I want to look that woman in the eye," she said, "and I want to make sure she knows she cannot push you around anymore." The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a fancy building with a kitchen, a ballroom, and several meeting rooms. About 20 people showed up, which was apparently a good turnout for these things. Brenda ran the meeting with the efficiency of someone who had done it 1,000 times. They went through the standard agenda: approval of last month's minutes, financial report, landscaping updates, upcoming events. It was all very boring and very normal. Then they got to new business. "I want to discuss a safety concern that has come to my attention," Brenda said, looking directly at me. We have a resident who has installed a large propane tank on their property without proper safeguards. This tank poses a potential explosion hazard to neighboring properties. Grace started to stand up, but I put my hand on her arm. Let her talk, I mouthed. The tank in question is not properly secured, not properly marked, and not properly monitored. I have asked our attorney to look into whether we can require its removal for safety reasons. Now I stood up. That is my medical propane tank, Brenda. You know it is my medical propane tank. We just settled a lawsuit about it. This is not about the previous incident, she said smoothly. This is about ongoing safety concerns. Your settlement with my husband does not address the community's safety. The tank is installed to code. It was inspected by the fire department when it was installed. It has all required safety features. Perhaps we need a second opinion on that. Another board member, a man in his 60s named Doug, spoke up. Brenda, I am not sure this is appropriate. If the tank is up to code, we cannot require its removal just because we do not like it. We can if it poses a safety hazard. Does it pose a safety hazard? Doug asked. Do we have any evidence of that? I have concerns, Brenda said. Concerns are not evidence, said another board member, a woman named Patricia. And frankly, Brenda, this looks like harassment. We all got copies of that settlement agreement. We all know what happened. We should not be revisiting this. I am not revisiting anything. I am raising a new concern about community safety. Grace stood up. You are retaliating against my father because he called you out for stealing his propane. That is what you are doing. Young lady, you are not a homeowner in this community. You do not have a right to speak at this meeting. Fine. Then I will speak outside this meeting. I will tell everyone in this neighborhood exactly what you did. I will put flyers in mailboxes. I will post on social media. I will make sure everyone knows that the HOA president stole medical propane and then tried to retaliate when she got caught. Brenda's face went pale. Are you threatening me? I am promising you. If you do not drop this right now, everyone will know what kind of person you are. The room was dead silent. Doug cleared his throat. I move that we table this discussion pending a proper safety inspection by a qualified third party, paid for by the HOA, with the understanding that if the tank passes inspection, we drop the matter entirely. I second that, Patricia said quickly. All in favor? Doug asked. 5 hands went up, including Doug and Patricia. Brenda did not raise her hand, but it did not matter. The motion passed. After the meeting, several people came up to me to express support. Apparently, Brenda had been making enemies on the board for a while, and people were getting tired of her behavior. Patricia even apologized for not speaking up sooner. She runs these meetings like a dictator, Patricia said. I have been trying to get enough board members together to vote her out, but it has been hard. This might be the push we need. Grace and I drove home in silence. I was exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep, but I also felt something else. Satisfaction, maybe, or vindication. You did good in there, Grace said. You did the talking, because you taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it is hard, even when you are tired. The third-party inspection happened 2 weeks later. A fire safety expert came out, looked at my propane tank, checked all the connections, reviewed the installation documentation, and tested all the safety features. His report was 3 pages long and concluded that the tank was properly installed, properly maintained, and posed no unusual safety risk to the community. In fact, he noted that it had several safety features beyond what code required, because it was medical equipment. The report was distributed to all HOA board members. I did not get an apology from Brenda, but the harassment stopped. For a while, Grace went back to Tucson a few days later, reassured that I was okay and that the situation was resolved. I went back to my quiet life, managing my health, avoiding unnecessary stress, and staying as far away from HOA drama as possible. But then the anonymous complaint started. First, it was a notice that someone had complained about my grass being 1 inch too tall. I had a landscaping service that came every 2 weeks, and my grass was always within HOA standards, but I got the notice anyway. I had to take photos with a ruler to prove compliance. Then it was a complaint about my trash cans being visible from the street. They were in my side yard, behind a gate, but apparently someone had spotted them from a certain angle. I had to move them further back. Then it was a complaint about the color of my front door being faded and needing repainting. It had been painted 18 months ago and looked fine, but I got cited anyway. Every complaint was anonymous. Every complaint came through the HOA management company, not directly from Brenda. And every complaint was technically within their right to make, even if they were petty and clearly targeted. Marcus called it a campaign of harassment, but he said it was hard to prove without catching them in the act. Document everything, he advised. Every notice, every complaint, every response. We are building a pattern. I was documenting, but I was also getting exhausted. Each complaint required time and energy to respond to. Photos, measurements, written explanations. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Then Grace called with an idea. "Dad, I am coming up this weekend, and I am bringing a surprise." "What kind of surprise?" "The good kind. Trust me." She arrived on Saturday morning with her boyfriend, Eric, who I had met a few times and liked. Eric was studying computer engineering and had a particular interest in home security systems. "Your dad said you have been having some harassment issues," Eric said after we all sat down with coffee. "I think I can help with that." He pulled out several small devices from his backpack. Security cameras, the wireless kind that upload to the cloud. "I am going to set these up around your property. Front yards, side yards, the propane tank area. They have night vision and motion detection. If anyone comes onto your property or does anything suspicious, we will have video evidence." "That seems extreme," I said. "Dad, someone is making your life miserable," Grace said. "We need to know who." Eric spent the afternoon installing 6 cameras, positioned strategically to cover all approaches to my house. They were small and unobtrusive, and he set them up so I could view the footage on my phone or computer. "The motion detection is sensitive," he explained. "You are going to get alerts for birds, cats, the mail carrier, but you will also get alerts if someone is snooping around." That night, after they left, I watched the camera feeds on my laptop. It felt strange to see my own property from these angles, like I was surveilling myself. But it only took 4 days for the cameras to pay off. I woke up at 2 in the morning to motion detection alerts from multiple cameras. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the feeds. Someone was in my side yard, right near the propane tank. I switched to the camera with the best angle and watched as a figure in dark clothing examined my propane tank, taking photos with their phone. The infrared camera made everything look ghostly and monochrome, but I could make out enough details. Average height, slim build, moving carefully and quietly. The figure spent about 5 minutes examining the tank, taking photos from different angles, then disappeared back the way they came, heading toward the street. I switched to the front camera and caught them walking away. They got into a car parked 2 houses down. A sedan, though I could not make out the model or license plate in the dark, but more importantly, as they got into the car, they passed under a streetlight. Just for a moment, I could see their face clearly. It was Brenda Whitmore. My heart was pounding, and not in a good way. I checked my oxygen levels and took a few deep breaths from my concentrator. Then I downloaded the video footage and emailed it to Marcus and to Grace. Grace called me 5 minutes later, wide awake despite the hour. "Are you kidding me? She is creeping around your house at 2 in the morning." "That is what it looks like. Dad, this is stalking. This is harassment. You need to call the police." "At 2 in the morning?" "Yes. What if she had done something to your propane tank? What if this is not just her being nosy?" She had a point. I called the non-emergency line and explained the situation. They sent an officer out, a different one this time, Officer Chen. She watched the video footage on my laptop and took a copy. "We can definitely file this as criminal trespassing," she said. "Given the ongoing issues you have documented and the fact that this involves your medical equipment, we can also look at stalking charges. Do you want to press charges?" "I want this to stop," I said. "I just want to be left alone." "I understand. Let me talk to my supervisor and to the detective who is handling your case. We will be in touch." By morning, the story had grown. Grace had posted the video on Facebook with a detailed explanation of everything that had been happening. She tagged the HOA management company, several local news stations, and used hashtags like HOA abuse and medical equipment theft. The video went viral. By that evening, I had 3 local news stations calling me for interviews. The story had everything: a sympathetic victim, a power-hungry HOA president, stolen medical equipment, and now late-night trespassing caught on camera. I agreed to one interview with Channel 12 News. Their reporter, a young woman named Jennifer Ortiz, came to my house with a cameraman and asked me to walk through everything that had happened. I showed her the propane tank, explained my medical condition, showed her the settlement documents, and played the security camera footage of Brenda on my property. "What do you want to happen now?" Jennifer asked. "I just want to be left alone to manage my health in peace." I did not ask for any of this. I just want a HOA that follows the law and respects people's rights. The story aired that night on the 6 o'clock news, then again at 10. Then it got picked up by the national news. By the next morning, my story was on CNN. The backlash against Brenda and the HOA was immediate and intense. The HOA's Facebook page was flooded with angry comments. The management company issued a statement distancing themselves from Brenda's actions. Other homeowners in the community started speaking out about their own experiences with Brenda's petty enforcement and harassment. And then the police got involved in a serious way. Detective Sarah Morrison called me that afternoon. "Mr. Watson, I have been reviewing your case. I want you to know that we are taking this very seriously. The video of Mrs. Whitmore trespassing on your property, combined with the pattern of harassment and the initial theft of your medical propane, gives us enough to move forward with charges." "What kind of charges?" "We are looking at theft, criminal trespassing, stalking, and potentially interfering with medical equipment. That last one is a Class 5 felony in Arizona if we can prove that her actions created a substantial risk of death or serious physical injury. I do not want to ruin her life. I just want her to stop." "I understand that. But Mr. Watson, she did not stop. You gave her multiple chances to make this right. You settled with her husband. You tried to move on, and she kept coming after you. At some point there have to be consequences." The detective was right, and I knew it. Some part of me still wanted to be the nice guy to let it go to avoid conflict. But another part of me, the part that had been ground down by 2 years of petty harassment and violation notices, wanted justice. "Do what you need to do," I said. They arrested Brenda Whitmore 3 days later. The charges were theft, criminal trespassing, stalking, and reckless endangerment. The interference with medical equipment charge was still being reviewed by the prosecutor's office. The arrest made the news too. More video of my propane tank, more interviews with me and with other homeowners who had been harassed by the HOA. The story became less about me and more about HOA abuse in general, about power-hungry board members and management companies that enabled them. Harold Whitmore called me the day after his wife was arrested. He sounded defeated. "Mr. Watson, I am sorry for all of it. I thought settling with you would be the end of it. I had no idea Brenda was still going after you. Did you really not know?" A long pause. "I knew she was angry. I knew she felt humiliated. But I did not know she was filing complaints or going onto your property. I swear to you, I did not know. She is your wife." "Yes, and she has problems that I have been ignoring for too long. This whole situation has made me realize that I have been enabling her behavior, making excuses, trying to smooth things over instead of addressing the real issues. I am sorry you are going through this." "You are sorry," he laughed bitterly. "You are the victim here. I am the one who should be apologizing, and I am. For whatever it is worth, I am truly sorry." After we hung up, I felt oddly sad. Harold seemed like a decent guy who had been trying to keep the peace, but keeping the peace sometimes means enabling bad behavior. I knew that from my own experiences of backing down from HOA disputes. The HOA held an emergency meeting 2 weeks later to vote on removing Brenda from the board. It was not even close. The vote was unanimous, with only Brenda abstaining because she was not allowed to vote on her own removal. Patricia was elected as the new president. Her first act was to issue a formal apology to me on behalf of the HOA and to announce a full review of their enforcement policies. "We have been allowing personal vendettas to masquerade as community standards enforcement," she said at the meeting. "That ends now. We are here to maintain property values and ensure a pleasant community, not to harass our neighbors." There was applause, which felt surreal. These were the same people who had sat through months of Brenda's reign without speaking up. But I guess sometimes it takes someone getting arrested for people to find their courage. The criminal case moved slowly, as criminal cases do. Brenda's lawyer tried to get the charges reduced, arguing that she had not intended to harm me and that her trespassing was just misguided concern about community safety. The prosecutor was not buying it. Mrs. Whitmore engaged in a months-long campaign of harassment against Mr. Watson after stealing fuel from his medical equipment. She continued this harassment even after settling a civil dispute. She trespassed on his property in the middle of the night. This was not a misunderstanding or a mistake. This was targeted, malicious behavior that put Mr. Watson's health at risk. In the end, Brenda accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to theft and criminal trespassing. The stalking charge was dropped, and the reckless endangerment charge was reduced to a misdemeanor. She was sentenced to 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory anger management counseling, and she was required to pay me full restitution for all costs I had incurred, including legal fees. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order preventing Brenda from coming within 500 feet of me or my property. "Mrs. Whitmore," the judge said at sentencing, "you held a position of trust in your community, and you abused that trust to harass a disabled neighbor. Your actions were not only illegal but morally reprehensible. You are fortunate that Mr. Watson's medical situation did not deteriorate due to your theft. If it had, we would be having a very different conversation. I hope you use this probation period to seriously reflect on your behavior and to get the help you clearly need." Brenda did not look at me during the hearing. She kept her eyes down, her face blank. Harold sat in the gallery, looking like he had aged 10 years. After it was over, Harold approached me in the hallway outside the courtroom. "Thank you for not pushing for harsher charges," he said. "I know you could have. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted my propane paid for. I know. And for what it is worth, Brenda and I are separating. I am moving out next month. I cannot be married to someone who would do what she did and still thinks she was in the right. I am sorry. Do not be. This is long overdue. I have been making excuses for her for years. Maybe this will be the wake-up call she needs, or maybe not. Either way, it is not my problem anymore." He walked away, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that it was finally over, sadness for the wreckage this whole situation had caused. Life slowly returned to normal. The news coverage died down. The HOA left me alone. My propane tank, now with a lock and several warning signs, stayed full. I went to my medical appointments, managed my oxygen levels, and tried to rebuild some sense of peace. Grace came up to visit regularly, always checking to make sure I was okay, always ready to fight my battles for me if needed. But there were no more battles to fight. Patricia, the new HOA president, actually did implement real reforms. They hired a new management company, one that specialized in conflict resolution rather than just enforcement. They created a formal appeals process for violation notices. They instituted training for board members on disability rights and fair housing laws. "We should have done this years ago," Patricia told me at one of the meetings. "It took your situation to make us realize how toxic things had become." About 6 months after Brenda's sentencing, I got a letter in the mail. It was from her. Just a single page handwritten. "Mr. Watson," it began. "My therapist suggested I write this letter as part of my treatment. I am not writing to make excuses or to ask for forgiveness. I am writing because I need to acknowledge what I did and the harm I caused. I was wrong. I let my embarrassment turn into anger, and I let that anger justify behavior that was cruel and dangerous. You could have died because of my actions, and I did not care enough to stop. That is something I have to live with. I am getting help. I am trying to understand why I behaved the way I did and to make sure I never behave that way again. I do not expect you to forgive me. I would not forgive me. But I wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong. Brenda Whitmore." I read the letter 3 times. It did not change anything. It did not undo the months of stress and harassment. But it was something. An acknowledgement. A small step toward accountability. I filed the letter away with all the other documentation from the case. A strange kind of closure. A year after everything started, I was still living in the same house, still managing my medical condition, still dealing with the occasional HOA notice about trivial things. But the notices were reasonable now. The enforcement was fair, and nobody was stealing my propane. Grace graduated from nursing school and got a job at a hospital in Phoenix, close enough to visit regularly. Eric proposed to her, and they started planning a wedding. Life moved forward. I thought about selling the house sometimes. Moving somewhere without an HOA, somewhere I could just exist without worrying about paint colors and grass height and privacy screens. But this was my home. I had fought for it, and I was not going to let anyone push me out. One evening, I was sitting on my back patio, watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky in those shades of orange and red that I had seen 1,000 times. My oxygen concentrator hummed steadily beside me. My propane tank, locked and secure, sat behind its privacy screen. My phone buzzed. A text from Grace. "Love you, Dad. Proud of you," I smiled and typed back. "Love you too, sweetheart." The sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared. My breathing was steady. My equipment was working. My home was secure. I had survived a chemical fire. I had survived the aftermath. And I had survived Brenda Whitmore and her HOA tyranny. Some days, survival was enough. Some days, it was everything. The propane tank that had caused so much trouble continued to do its job, providing backup power for the medical equipment that kept me breathing. The lock that Pete had installed remained firmly in place. The warning signs that Harold had paid for were clearly visible. And the security cameras that Eric had installed kept a watchful eye on everything, recording nothing more interesting than the occasional cat or mail carrier. Life in the HOA continued around me. New residents moved in. Old residents moved out. The community newsletter came out every month with updates about landscaping projects and social events. I even attended a few of the events, tentatively rebuilding connections with neighbors who had been distant during the conflict. Some of them apologized for not speaking up sooner. Others just pretended nothing had happened. I did not hold grudges. I had spent too much energy on conflict already. One afternoon, about 18 months after Brenda's arrest, I saw Harold at the grocery store. We made eye contact across the produce section, and for a moment I thought he would pretend not to see me. But instead he walked over. "Samuel," he said, "how are you?" "I am well. How are you?" "Better. I am living in Temp now. Smaller place, but it is mine. I am dating someone, starting over. That is good. I am glad you are doing well." I heard Brenda finished her community service. She is moving to Tucson. Wants a fresh start somewhere people do not know her story. I hope she finds what she is looking for. That is generous of you, I shrugged. Holding on to anger takes too much energy. I am trying to save my energy for staying alive. Harold nodded slowly. You are a better man than I would be in your position. For what it is worth, this whole thing taught me a lot about enabling bad behavior. I am in therapy now too, working on my own issues. Good for you. Seriously. We talked for a few more minutes, awkward but civil, and then went our separate ways. I never saw Harold again, but I heard he eventually remarried and moved out of state. I hoped he was happy. The legal settlement money from Brenda covered all my costs, and then some. I used the extra to upgrade my home oxygen system and to install solar panels on my roof. The HOA had regulations about solar panels, but Patricia personally shepherded my application through approval, determined to show that the new board was committed to supporting, not hindering, residents' needs. The solar panels meant I had backup power for my medical equipment even without the propane generator. I kept the propane system as a secondary backup, but knowing I had redundant systems gave me peace of mind I had not felt in years. Grace and Eric got married in a beautiful ceremony in Tucson. I walked her down the aisle with my portable oxygen tank discreetly tucked into a backpack. She cried. I cried. It was one of the best days of my life. During the reception, Grace pulled me aside. "Dad, I want you to know something. Watching you stand up to Brenda, watching you fight for your rights even when it was hard, that changed me. I used to think being a good nurse meant just being kind and compassionate, but you taught me that sometimes being a good advocate means being tough. Means standing up to people who abuse their power. That is the kind of nurse I want to be. You are going to be an amazing nurse, sweetheart. You already are. I learned from the best." 2 years after the propane incident, I got a call from a journalist working on a documentary about HOA abuse. She wanted to feature my story as one of several case studies. I was hesitant at first, but Grace convinced me. "Dad, your story could help other people. Other people dealing with abusive HOAs, other people with medical equipment who are being harassed. You could make a difference." So I did the interview. I told my story again, this time for a camera that would share it with a wider audience. The documentary, called American Homeowner Hostages, aired on Netflix 6 months later and became a surprising hit. Suddenly, I was hearing from people all over the country with similar stories. HOAs demanding removal of wheelchair ramps. HOAs citing people for medical equipment visible from the street. HOAs imposing fines for accessible modifications. The stories were heartbreaking and infuriating. I started volunteering with a disability rights organization that helped people fight back against discriminatory HOA actions. I was not a lawyer, but I could share my experience, connect people with resources, and offer support to people going through what I had gone through. It gave me purpose. It turned my ordeal into something meaningful. 3 years after everything started, I was sitting in a legislative hearing in Phoenix, testifying in support of a new bill that would strengthen protections for homeowners with disabilities. The bill would specifically prohibit HOAs from citing or fining homeowners for medical equipment, accessible modifications, or related safety features. "My name is Samuel Watson," I began. "3 years ago, the president of my HOA stole propane from the tank that powers my medical equipment. When I reported the theft, she retaliated against me with a campaign of harassment that lasted months. She was eventually arrested and convicted, but the fact that it got that far, that I had to fight that hard just to have my medical equipment left alone, shows that our current laws are not strong enough." I told them the whole story. The theft, the harassment, the trespassing, the arrest. The legislators listened intently, asking questions, taking notes. The bill passed 6 months later. It was not a perfect law, but it was a start. And when the governor signed it, he invited me to the signing ceremony. "This is Samuel's Law," the governor said, which was not the official name, but it made for good press. "It ensures that Arizonans with disabilities cannot be harassed by HOAs for having medical equipment or making necessary accommodations. No one should have to go through what Samuel Watson went through." I stood next to the governor as he signed the bill, with Grace on one side and Patricia, the reformed HOA president, on the other. Cameras flashed. Reporters asked questions, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Pride. Not pride in fighting or in winning. Pride in using my experience to help others. Pride in turning something terrible into something useful. Life continued to move forward. My lung condition did not improve, but it did not get significantly worse either. I managed it day by day, breath by breath. The oxygen concentrator hummed beside my bed at night, a constant companion. The propane tank sat secured and undisturbed behind its privacy screen. The HOA, under Patricia's leadership and then under her successor, became almost boring in its normalcy. They maintained the common areas. They enforced reasonable standards. They left people alone unless there was a genuine issue. It was what an HOA was supposed to be. I even joined the Architectural Review Committee, the group that approved or denied modification requests. I wanted to make sure that anyone else with medical needs would have someone on that committee who understood, who would fight for them if needed. 4 years after the propane incident, I got a Facebook friend request from an unexpected source. Brenda Whitmore. I stared at the request for a long time, my finger hovering over the accept and decline buttons. Part of me wanted to just decline and move on, but curiosity got the better of me. I accepted. She sent me a message immediately. "Samuel, I know this is unexpected. I am not reaching out to relitigate the past or to make excuses. I have been in intensive therapy for years now, and I have been diagnosed with a personality disorder that helps explain, though not excuse, my behavior. I am on medication now. I am doing the work. I wanted to reach out because I am doing a step in my treatment where I have to face the people I have harmed and acknowledge without justification what I did. I stole from you. I endangered your life. I harassed you. I abused my position of power. All of that is true, and all of that was wrong. I am not asking for forgiveness or for a response. I just wanted you to know that I am trying to be better. That is all. I hope you are well. Brenda. I read the message several times. Then I showed it to Grace, who had stopped by for dinner. "What do you think?" I asked. Grace read it carefully. "I think she is trying. Whether she succeeds or not, I do not know. But the fact that she reached out, that she is acknowledging everything without making excuses, that is more than a lot of people would do." Should I respond? "Only if you want to. You do not owe her anything, Dad." I thought about it for a few days. Then I wrote back. "Brenda, I appreciate you reaching out. I am glad you are getting help and doing the work. I hope you continue to improve and that you find peace. I have moved forward with my life, and I hope you can move forward with yours. Take care, Samuel." It was brief, but it was honest. I did not want to reopen a friendship or to pretend everything was fine. But I also did not want to carry anger anymore. I was too tired and life was too short. She responded with a simple thank you. And that was the end of it. 5 years after the propane incident, I was invited to speak at a national conference on disability rights. The topic was HOA discrimination, and I was the keynote speaker. I stood in front of 300 people and told my story again, but this time with the benefit of years of perspective. "What happened to me was not unique," I said. "Across this country, people with disabilities are facing discrimination from HOAs every single day. They are being cited for wheelchair ramps, for accessible vans, for medical equipment. They are being fined, harassed, and sometimes forced out of their homes. This is not acceptable. We need stronger laws. We need better enforcement. We need HOAs to understand that accessibility is not a preference or a convenience. It is a right." The audience applauded. After my speech, dozens of people came up to share their own stories or to thank me for speaking out. I exchanged contact information with advocates and attorneys, with legislators and journalists. The network of people fighting this fight was growing. I flew home to Arizona exhausted but energized. Grace picked me up from the airport and we stopped for dinner on the way home. "You know what I am proud of," she said over pasta. "What? You did not let them make you bitter. You could have become angry and closed off after everything Brenda did. But instead, you turned it into something positive. You are helping people. That is incredible." "I had a good teacher," I said. "You stood up for me when I was too tired to stand up for myself. You showed me that fighting back was not just possible but necessary. We make a good team. We do." I drove home through the familiar streets of Scottsdale, past the houses with their perfectly maintained lawns and their community standards, past the clubhouse where so many contentious HOA meetings had taken place, past Brenda's old house, now occupied by a young couple with 2 kids who waved when they saw me. My house looked exactly the same as it had 5 years ago. Same paint color, same landscaping, same oxygen delivery truck parked in front once a month, but everything was different now. The propane tank that had caused so much trouble was just a propane tank now. Locked, secured, undisturbed, doing its job. The HOA that had been a source of constant stress was now just a normal, boring HOA. And I was not just surviving anymore. I was living. I was speaking out. I was helping others. I was making a difference. 6 years after the propane incident, Arizona's disability protection laws had been strengthened significantly, in part due to my advocacy work. Several other states had passed similar laws. The national conversation about HOA reform was growing. And I was still here, still breathing, still fighting. Not fighting with anger or vengeance. Fighting with purpose. Fighting to make sure that what happened to me would not happen to others. or if it did, that they would have the support and resources to fight back. My oxygen concentrator hummed beside me as I sat at my computer, responding to emails from people across the country who needed advice or support. The sun was setting outside my window, painting the Arizona sky in those familiar shades of orange and red. My propane tank was full. My medical equipment was working. My home was secure. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be, breathing, living, making a difference, one breath at a time.